Please join me in welcoming Olov from Zoink.
Hello. Hello. I'm Olov Redmalm, and I'm a game director at Zoink Games slash Thunderful now. We have merged into Thunderful Development, so it's Image and Form behind the SteamWorld games and Zoink Games who made games such as Fe and Flipping Death and Stick to the Man, and also Guru Games here in Skövde. And as a game director, I at Zoink, I just take care of the whole vision of the game and what it's supposed to be about and how it's supposed to feel, and work closely with leads and producers to just make it feel right and follow the vision. And I'm originally a comic book artist and studied comics for a while, where I learned storytelling, writing, and storyboarding, and dramaturgy. And but during that time, I also worked a lot. I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons like most people do these days. And as I made these campaigns together with my friends, I always thought that it's so meaningful and fun, and look at we're already 6 people playing this thing, and it's so meaningful, and we're enjoying it, and but it's also so melancholy to see that it doesn't this is it. We are the ones who are experiencing this, and how do you work with this? And that's where I found video games, and I started studying game graphics at the Game Assembly in Malmö, where I first started on working with concept art and storyboards on Fe and Flipping Death and Bouncing Story, and so I made this. I worked on if you've played Fe, maybe you remember the hieroglyphs you would sing to when they would shine up, and so that was a way for us to hint at some background story, since it's a silent game, or rather a singing game with no language except "Au" and singing. That was a way to hint at story, and of course nobody gets what they really are about, but we figured that the player will come up with so much more cooler ideas than we could ever come up with. And I also worked on this Silent Ones episode. You find these helmets of the bad guys, and you put them on, and then you suddenly go from third person to first person and experience their background story, what happened way back when they ruined the world. So that was my foot into direction, and that got me onto. After that, I moved on to Ghost Giant as game director and art director. So we were a quite small team of 10 or 15 people. This segment is about creativity and inspiration, and I just thought I'd walk through some of our process and thinking when coming up with Ghost Giant, and if I have time, a little bit about Lost in Random, which we're working on right now. Ghost Giant got a lot of great reviews, and mostly for its narrative. And I mean, the gameplay itself isn't very revolutionary. It's basically a point and click, but we call it a poke and grab at Zoink. So it's just pulling off those old tropes, but in VR instead. And we wanted to put a deep story into a medium that hasn't explored that much. We felt like we hadn't created a VR game before, and there was a lot of exploration to do, and we felt like we just headed into it with an explorer's mind. And so I worked with creative direction, art direction, and voice acting and casting and story and design. And I'll just kick off a trailer to set the mood.
When you feel sad and lonely, friendship may come. From where you least expected.
It's real! It's no! Leave me alone! No!
From the creators of Fe and Flipping Death.
You look like you've seen a ghost.
That's the spirit. Comes a heartfelt story in VR.
I'm sorry I panicked. I've never seen anything like it before.
About trying to keep life together.
It's time for television.
With a little help from a very big friend.
But really, who are you?
So we worked with Sony on this one, and we got a really short notice when we were just about starting on the game, and having like a very bare skeleton of each level. We got a request to make this trailer for E3, and everything is basically just cheating. Lots of animations, faking gameplay, and I think there was a segment where you rotate the houses and stuff that's from our prototype that never made it into the game actually. So it's a lot of cheating, but that's what artists do, right? So Ghost Giant is about a boy who one day meets the Ghost Giant, which you are, and you play as the Ghost Giant, and you lead the boy through his everyday life, and you realize that he's quite stressed. He has a lot on his shoulders, and it's up to you to lead him through the challenges. And he's the only one who can see you, so you can you explore this kind of dollhouse world and lift houses, and yeah, as you saw. And Iron Giant was a huge inspiration in the way that relationship is built between the two, with first, of course, Louis being super scared of the Ghost Giant, and then trying to gain his trust. So we wanted to build VR is such a powerful way to really put the player there in the world, and in another way, in a different way, make the main character really acknowledge that you are there, and in a different way, you are the one poking him, you are the one lifting that rock, and even it's very, very mundane things that would be quite boring in a flat screen game. You take it to a new level in VR, and but it all started with an idea, of course. And Klaus, my boss, Klaus Lengeled, he first came to me with the idea of a giant ghost leading a little kid around the world, and saving him from bullies, and we first started looking at these, like the idea really first popped when we saw these pictures from Box Trolls and other Leica movies, where you see the behind the scenes with the creators playing around with little houses and characters, and we thought back to building Legos or your own little miniature villages, and making the characters come alive, and wanted to channel that energy and find that in grown-ups too. So it's a game for the whole family, and most VR games, when we tried, we did a lot of obviously we tried different VR games, and we found that so many games play with like huge scale, and that guy over there, and a huge whale coming over you, or stuff from afar, and making you really small. But we found that those games that felt really intimate and really made you feel like you were there were the ones that where you come up close to things, like Mouse, for instance. What's it called again? No, not. Huh? Moss. Thank you. Sorry. So that one, for instance, we played a lot, and it's so much more intimate experience, and you get more of a parallax also with the miniature models passing your face. And with those thoughts, we created our pitch, and this is some screenshots from the final game. And with technical limitations, we wanted to make this really realistic world. I mean, realistic kind of dollhouse world. But of course, there were technical limitations, so we had to find a way around that, still make it look kind of realistic. So we found this hand-painted look, and also made the characters these wooden characters, so we could basically just make characters out of NURBS and get away with it, and baked lighting, and so we still managed to pull off this quite crafted style. Yes. So these are some pages from the original pitch, which we set up like a very simple illustrated story with cute characters. Originally, Louis was a bat. We changed him to a cat because we figured there are more cat people out there than bat people. But some of us still miss the bat. And yeah, and they had a little bit cooler, more jagged look back then. And we also wanted to, we took that to a more cuter look along the way to kind of make the player even more comfortable with the characters, so we could tell a darker story underneath that. And yeah, so originally we made a prototype first where we had a kind of like a gibberish language going on. We wanted to save us some work, so we had this gibberish language instead of a script and acting. So that would save us some work, we figured. But in the end, we felt like we wanted to, like something we don't see so often in VR is a fully explored deep story, and for that we needed a great script and voice acting, we figured, and that's what we do, and that's what we're good at. So why not follow that? So we involved. Oh, here are something we made these simple puzzle scenario images, concepts, just really simple things to explain how you build your relationship with Louis. Yeah, so with the story part in mind, we brought on Sarah B. Elfgren, who is an acclaimed Swedish author, wrote Cirkeln, and she also the Dödas Röster, a Swedish podcast, also really great murder mystery. She played our prototype and saw these like old tropes of, like, you know, bully jocks in these typical basketball jackets pushing around Louis, and she felt like, oh, we've seen this before, and what if it was in France, for instance, and she wanted to take the story to another level, and so yeah, we set the game in France to make it just for the sake of giving it a different look. And so this is the original synopsis that Sarah wrote. Water. You are floating beneath the surface of a lake, a golden dawn sky shimmering high above. You swim upwards and break the surface. Louis is crying on the beach, a fishing rod next to him. Such big tears for such a small creature. They flow into the water like ink, forming your hands. Somehow you have been created out of this one's little tears. And this whole synopsis, it's like what is it, six pages, and it's what we based the whole puzzle script on. So we started doing concepts, and Sarah and I would sit down. I took her synopsis and broke it up into parts and started fleshing it out with puzzles in between that would still work with the narrative and bring the player to these important story beats. Yeah, so she wrote the synopsis. I took it. I would flesh it out, then bring it back to her, and she would look at these small details. Like, for instance, in the beginning of the game, Louis climbs up a tree house, and originally you would poke it and break it before he even got up there, and it felt very unsympathetic and like you were a destructive ghost giant. And she would make little tweaks, like, oh, instead could we maybe poke it to get a reaction from Louis while it's up there, and the whole thing tips over, and you have to save Louis and lift it back up. He climbs down safely, and then it breaks, and it wasn't really your fault. You were trying to help. So little details like that to make the narrative and gameplay go more hand in hand and build the sense of character and the bond between the two. So this is also a concept by Stina Ram, who did basically all the concepts for the game. It's really her soul in the characters also. Yes. And then we would bring it to our producer, Sebastian Strand. Like once every month, we would have a chapter ready for the next milestone, and we'll sit down with him, like, okay, here's out, just breathe, one thing at a time, and he would rub his temples, go away for 24 hours, and then come back and like, okay, all right, we can pull this off, but we have to cut this thing, and we would constantly have this negotiation back and forth. And he was just a perfect producer of like both listening to ideas and seeing like, okay, this is great, we really need to make it work, but also we need to be realistic and pull this off. So it was really great relationship. Yeah. And this is the sequence of events script, how it looks when we've taken Sarah's synopsis and broken it up into, or like fleshed it out into a longer script. So we have all the dialogue IDs referencing, and we would write like, here we need a little banter from Louis, or here we need a hint about a key to a house, or so yeah. And yeah, and of course music was very important for Ghost Giant, and we wanted to find a sound that kind of complemented what was going on in the game. So in the beginning, the first test we did for the intro, for instance, we had this kind, when the Ghost Giant first meets Louis and comes out of the water and scares him, we have this kind of silent horror movie type dun 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 music that became very much on the nose and kind of tårta på tårta, cake on cake. Yeah, it was funny, but not very memorable, but this is what it sounded like. So this is the first time you poke him. Poke him again. Oh no, the Ghost Giant. And this is so we wanted to find something that contrasted what was going on more after that, and this is what it turned out like. I want to skip forward a little bit. Oh, this is the intro, by the way, the main menu, which we also wanted to make tangible and part of the kind of puzzly, the crafty feel of the game. So we really followed the synopsis to the every detail.
Huh? It's a ghost. A giant ghost giant! Help! No!
So this way we know that, of course, what's happening in the world is that the Ghost Giant is scaring Louis senseless, but the player knows that this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship and story with the music going on there to soothe the player. And also, given the music also plays into showing what kind of character Ghost Giant is, what his intention is, what his intentions are. Despite the panic that is going on. Here's some early concepts, mock-ups for that main menu we saw earlier. And it's very important, of course, for a story like this to find great actors, so the player doesn't get annoyed with the main character and so on. It's important to just give them different scenes to try out both the emotional stuff and the funny stuff. And especially for the main character, who he goes through a lot of tragedy, but also humor and warmth. So originally we had in the trailer we had the narrator voice. He also did the voice for Louis. So they had a great range of, you can do this really dark voice, but also a very squeaky boy's voice. But it comes off very Nickelodeon. And when you do the comedy, it's great. But when you put him in terrible situations and his emotions, they don't. You can tell that he's acting and making up a voice. So we found Kim Lin Tran, who is amazing and could more naturally do a boy's voice, but also had the humor and and the emotional range necessary. So this is the first audition she sent.
Oh dear. It's Morris. What should I say? Hi. Hi, Morris. I'm sorry about that. I can only say I'm sorry so many times. What do you want then? You could have played on your own. An octopus has 8 arms. I was...
So he's making up excuses for why he couldn't make it to his best friend, and he's constantly making up these lies about his mother when you follow him throughout the story. He even keeps away those secrets from you, but you can tell that he's like the grown-ups ask, like, "Oh, where's your mother?" And he keeps it a secret. And we even used some of the stuff from this audition. The screams are what's in the trailer, even though the music, even though the sound quality is quite bad. And our sound designer squirmed at it. We insisted on using it because we found that actors, obviously, when they want to get the job, they give 150%, and it's hard to get that same energy. I at least haven't found a good way of that yet. So the best energy came in the very first take. We work with most of our actors over the Atlantic, and it works actually very well to email back and forth, but also if you're really trying to get the right mood and you're asleep at different times of the day, it helps to send some voice feedback. So this is the...
Oh dear.
Oh, sorry. Whoop. Sorry. Okay, so I was just thinking about I'm listening to the when he's hiding behind the rock when you're picking the sunflowers, and I wonder if you could try to take a little bit more like he's really what's he doing? Oh, I'm sure it's great. Yeah, so you get the idea. But you want to wait with those until, first you want to try to distill it down to as few words as possible, describing the emotions. And if they don't get it, you can come back with a more specific explanation of what you're looking for. Send some reference pictures of a movie you like, or just use whatever you can to get the message across. And so yeah, in Ghost Giant, to keep the players, it's a quite scripted, linear story, and there's a lot of dialogue and sensitive scenes. We always try to find ways to wake up the player and keep them engaged, because there's a lot of waiting for Louis to play out a scene between him and his best friend or his mom or anything. So yeah, we play with a lot of with contrast. So with music and with you poke Louis and something, and the whole screen glows, and also we have this buddy system where if you wave or you clench your fist and extend it to him, he understands that he wants to bump my fist, or he wants to do a high five, and if you do a certain combo, you can do a secret handshake with Louis, and you can also poke him for hints. So try to find ways to make the game, this kind of scripted experience more organic, or the illusion of it being organic. So we can start this video with quite low volume. So this is one of the first levels we created. It's kind of 25% into the story.
What's your name, laddie?
We could lower the volume just a little bit more. Thanks. And we looked a lot at Petsen och Findus, a Swedish kids story with lots of details. All these old bohemian houses with lots of books and things to poke at. There's a point-and-click game based on those books as well. And we wanted that feel in this level. This was supposed to be like the iconic Ghost Giant level, where there's lots of little things to play with and fiddle with, and like a Christmas calendar open and you find a little surprise. And in this level, so as I mentioned before, you're following Louis through the story, and you realize that he has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He needs to find seeds for his farm, and so for that you need to go into Sancourt, the the main city and look for a delivery that's missing. And here you have to repair the crane in the harbor because the boat is broken, or the crane. Sorry, that will take the seeds over. And it's one of the first levels we worked on, so it was there was a lot of going back and fixing it, a lot of dreams that about making it a little bit overly complicated, but in the end we fixed it. So yeah, this is a very puzzle-heavy scene that we wanted to be in contrast to what happens next, which is a very solemn scene, more a vacation from all the tedious puzzles. Could skip forward a little bit more, maybe. Could you skip forward a little bit? If some more. A little bit more. Sorry. And a little bit more. Sorry, I'm used to. Yeah. So here in this scene, Louis gets back into town and has successfully delivered the seeds to Monsieur Tulip over there. And then he sees his best friend. And here's one of those scenes where this is from the audition also. He's making up these excuses why he can't hang out with his friend. And it's of course because he's very, very busy with the farm and all his responsibilities. And we try to find out a way how to make cutscenes in VR, since you obviously can't take the camera from the player because that hurts and will make them sick. We had to dim down the lights and made this kind of theater feeling. Since it's a dollhouse, we could work with it like that. And we also this scene, for instance, was one that was subject to a lot of cutting of dialogue because it was a bit too long, and even then it felt a little bit too long. So then we made this kind of scene that hoists the characters up to more the ghost giant's eye level, and that was enough apparently to make people still feel engaged. And of course, great voice acting and an important story beat. And also again here, we do nothing and let the player reconnect to Louis. This is something throughout the game we went back and added little moments like this where you had to touch base with Louis. We added some rewrites, some extra dialogue where he's like, "Oh right, this is what just happened, and sorry, I forgot about you there for a moment, Ghost Giant." And yeah, just continuously reaffirm your existence in this world. We can skip forward a little bit. So yeah, now we're back at the farm and we're helping him sow the seeds, and it's such a basic scene. It's very Animal Crossing. You just you sow the seeds, pull out these sunflowers first, this weed, and we were a bit worried, like, oh, will this? I mean, there's no challenge in this level. Will this be enough? And we started second guessing ourselves, but no, we really need a calm, just really soothing scene here for what's to come, and also to give the player a little rewarding vacation from that tedious harbor scene. Yeah, this is really where Louis and the Ghost Giant really find each other. We can skip forward a little bit more, and you get to fly him around on a cloud. It's very, very cheesy and beautiful. and also it's fun to see how players are very, very, very careful when they lift him off the ground, because they don't want him to fall. Because there's a really nice rainbow streak that's supposed to, you see it. But now when he says, "I'm getting sick," that's when they start to swing him around, because they want him to puke. And so, excuse me, I'm just gonna blow my nose. And yeah, this is from a YouTube playthrough that I found. So I'm not responsible for trying to make the little cat puke. But yeah, so here and now finally we're done, and you've been waiting so long, hopefully, to meet Louis' mother, because he's been lying about her the whole. That's the big thing. Like, why does he have so much responsibility, and where's his mother? And now we're finally gonna meet her and show her make her proud. we can increase the volume, I think, yeah.
Mom and I, not you and I. That is, if you're not the ghost of an ancient giant relative of mine. If she can't see you, though, I probably shouldn't tell her about you just yet. She gets spooked easily. Spooked. Mama! Look, just so you know, sometimes my mom gets really sad. Like, really sad. But she always gets better. And this will cheer her up, I'm sure. Mama, guess what? The rats had eaten all the sunflower seeds, but I got a whole sack for free from Monsieur Philippe. And then we sowed them, and then it rained, and the seeds are already sprouting. It's like magic, it really is. And... Mom? Mom.
I'm tired, Louis. Sorry.
No, oh no, no, no. This is bad. She'll get better. She always does. But...
And then for the first time in the game, we shrink the player, and we've done nothing serious with the movement because we were overly worried about making the player sick. We wanted to be a really calm, soothing experience that you could you could play a couple of hours at least without needing a break if you wanted to. Of course, breaks are important, but yeah, and it's just an example of what power VR can have to really enhance the emotions in a game, and also again with the contrasts from this very puzzly scene with so much to do and like hurdy-gurdy, lots of humor and wonky stuff going on, wonky characters with funny voices, and then this very soothing scene, and then we totally killed the sound, all except the sighing of Pauline, Louis' mother, to really make it like this is all that we always wanted to. We wanted to make the player feel like the game was broken, almost. And we you stand there and wait, like, oh, am I supposed to do something? And then you poker, like no tutorial, no hints, nothing. And so contrast like that to keep, and also, of course, obviously the shrinking of the player, which is connected to the emotions of Louis. And it happens several times in the game. So here are some more concepts of those characters in the harbor. And that scene with Cloud, the Cloud scene, for instance, was one of those scenes. Actually, Sarah came up with that you take the cloud and ride him around the sky, and it was a scene that was just for everyone was just such a this scene, we see how great this is going to be. We even had the soundtrack ready. We're already working with a musician who had some previously recorded tracks. The music that plays there already, he had already recorded with his band, and we're like, this is perfect for the Cloud scene. And it's great to have those scenes to hold on to when you're struggling through creating this very puzzly, complicated level, but you know it's going to be worth it because we're going to get there and it's going to be beautiful, and so those are important to hold on to, and also when you start second guessing yourself about, is it complicated enough, is it puzzly enough, like remember that gut feeling you had from the beginning and stick with it, no matter what feedback you get or worries you get from different directions. As I said, we wanted to make this very cute style to really make the people comfortable and then break their hearts. And it's really important to involve the writer from the beginning instead of plaster on story to rescue the game in hindsight. I mean, after in post production and to read, because you can really also, if you constantly bounce back and forth with the writer, you can really make some great connections from gameplay to narrative and make them enhance each other and strengthen each other. Make gameplay make sense and narrative makes sense in a whole different level. So yeah, I have a little bit of time left. Also some early concepts of Pauline and her room. And this is also the audition from Karen Collar, who played Pauline and now also plays the big bad of Lost in Random.
I'm tired, Louis. Sorry. That's nice, honey, but Mama needs to rest.
Also a great example of voice acting that was so great from the very beginning, from the audition, that we had to keep it for the final game, even though the sound quality was quite poor. But it didn't matter. Right, yeah, some more concepts from the cloud scene, and currently we're moving on to. I'm a little bit short on time, so I'm gonna skip through a couple of things, but I'll show you a trailer of the game we're working on now, which is a flat screen game, a combat adventure called Lost in Random.
The world of random bends with the roll of one dice. A dice that has ruled this kingdom for generations, transforming the fates of people just like you. But what if I told you there is another dice with the power to change everything? Now, my friend, it's your turn to roll, to play the odds, and break the curse of random.
Well, well.
You can't have the sweet without the sour.
No, Dicey. They should be scared of us, right?
So moving on from Ghost Giant, we were a very art and narrative driven studio, so we were really in the mood for something visually darker after that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the process there also. So it's about Even and her dice. Even's a girl who grows up in this very poor district of the world called Random, where this dark force rules with an all-powerful rigged dice that is rolled every day to see how the different districts in this world changes. And every 12-year-old on the day of their 12th birthday must roll this dice to decide who they are, what place, where they will be, where they will spend the rest of their lives, and what their role will be in the world of Random. And I thought, let me just check a second here. Yes, okay. Right. I'm just gonna skip forward. So talking about, like, sometimes in this industry, especially when you're about to start working on a new idea, I mean, you're basically still that 6-year-old kid coming up with, like, oh, what if this character comes in and he challenges this guy to a duel, and then he is his father, and but now there's real stakes, and that it's a minefield for feeling like an imposter, and like, what do I know of the world, and what do I mean with random? And we looked at all these different. Early on, we looked at artists like Sean Tan and of course all the Leica movies and Over the Garden Wall, and just that kind of effortless storytelling really appeals to us. How this is just matter-of-factly how it is in this world. And I remember having early on we had lunches coming up with ideas for this game. And we were really questioning ourselves what we, because it wasn't until we we drew all these different dark fantasy pictures, and we only knew that we wanted to do this dark fairy tale kind of game. And it wasn't until this we found this painting of a girl and her dice that we realized that the dice, that's supposed to be, I mean, the main, what happens if you put that into the world, and both story-wise and gameplay-wise, it's such a can of worms of like randomness in games, and making a game too random versus random enough, or I mean, not random enough. I'm sorry, I can't talk so much about this game yet, so I'm being quite whimsical. But my point is that we were having a lot of we were questioning ourselves a lot, like what do we want to say with randomness, but and with a story like this. And I think it's important to when you're at a blank canvas, try to just relax in the mystery and be okay with not knowing. And I mean, like Shantan, the artist we're very inspired by, says he takes the line for a walk. So he first draws, for instance, a bird with wheels, and he doesn't know why it has it until long after, when he sits and writes a story based on that concept art. So this story has been quite art-driven and based on a lot of drawings, like, oh, what if that character is this and that, and let the story and the exploration. I mean, let the project take you for a ride instead of always trying to find the answers. And it's so important. I mean, it's always so expected of you to always know and be certain of what you're talking about. And I think it's important to be okay with not knowing, and also let people know that I don't know, and let's be okay with that and just explore for a bit. And sorry, these are a bunch of images that I have to skip through. So it's very important to stand up for and give room for your whimsicality, and while it's of course super important to organize and plan, and that's what makes the project float and not blow up, it can make creativity quite static and kill it along the way if you're too tied to planning and organization. And it's important to always keep that giddy creative kid with you along the journey, even into the final phases of the game, because you never know when it's gonna pop up this solution that'll, if we just give us a little bit of time, maybe we need to cut this little thing to give us time for this thing. You never know when it's gonna, because you don't know until you see the stuff in the game what's gonna make it really pop. Yeah. And yes, I think that's about it. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the lovely presentation. A big round of applause. And as always, you can ask questions on Discord, and I will see them here. If you in the audience have any questions, raise your hand. I will have to repeat it so we hear it in the stream. Do you have any questions right now? Okay, we will wait. I will kick it off. Yep. Because we have a few minutes for questions. So I really appreciate the way that you combine gameplay with the narrative. Like, you really think about both at the same time, and even music comes in so early. Yep. I really think that that's great, and I think that many games could benefit from having the approach that you have. But you talked a little bit about how you think about random and what you want to say with it. Do you feel like we have a responsibility as storytellers? Could you talk a little bit of?
Absolutely, I think it's such a opportunity to make an impression on the world. I mean, to affect the world, and with randomness, the more we talked about it, of course. I mean, life is like. I mean, if you ever, I mean, it's a constant roll of the dice. What's gonna happen next, and you try to always foresee what's gonna happen next to control your destiny, and that can be very harmful. And with randomness, we want to explore like rolling, like rolling with the punches, and the main character tries to find her place in the world and this very random world, and tries to find some kind of find herself in it, and also some calm even amidst the storm, and so it's a lot about that, like need for control versus rolling with it and just take it as it comes. Yeah.
Do you personally feel like you have some kind of legacy you want to leave with the stories you tell, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very strongly about the stories we tell, and it's super. For me personally, it's pointless if it doesn't have a point, or if it doesn't. But I mean, I love games that don't have a point except having fun, but that's also a point. So, but I mean, I love to really try to send an important message. Yes.
Is there any particular topic or something that's very close to your heart?
Yeah, mental health generally, I think, is very important to be open about and make characters you can relate to, and even in random we have themes of that, and not every person is a bad guy and has history to why they are who they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the scene like where the little character was riding in the clouds, and with the mother who obviously suffers from mental health issues. I was thinking, in a VR game, aren't you gonna make people cry? Like, how does that work in VR? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think we made some. Yeah, I think that's part of our like. Yeah. If it's gonna ruin the headset, or
or like, how is that experience crying in VR? Are you gonna be able to see anything?
Yeah, I mean, people sweat so much already as it is. But we were of course always making a running joke about people are gonna ruin their headsets with their tears. And,
they're gonna sue you.
Yeah, but it's of course super scary. The biggest uncertainty of the game, because so much rides on the narrative. It's so important that people like the character and the voice acting, and you don't know, because you're of course we invite playtesters, and you all, I mean, everyone I think everyone on the team had imposter syndrome, so everyone's like, no, they're probably just saying that to be nice if they said it was good, or you know, we would stand together and look at the animation for the mother when she's like, no, I think you would like this if you're depressed, no, I think you would like, and when we suddenly realized that we're all talking about our own experiences and how we would, so it was very such a therapeutic experience to work with that as a team as well. That topic, it brings you together on a different level, I think.
Yeah, I mean, working with games can be therapeutic, like bringing that together. I think it's so beautiful that you are bringing this to light, and like I think it can take away some stigma as well. Like, these are stories that needs to be told, and like to show it more, like to show that we should talk about it more.
Yeah,
as a community. And
even if you feel super scared of a topic, and I don't know anything about this, and who am I to talk about this and make this kind of character, it's all the more important to make research and like do it, because you're going to give your unique viewpoint, and you'll learn a lot and meet interesting people, and make sure you just involve the people who can teach you about the topic. And
we have a question here from the audience.
Oh yeah, all the time.
I'm just going to repeat the question for the stream. So did you, as a development team, cry during the process of making the game?
Yeah, I would read the script out loud to the team on Monday morning, like, this is what Sarah's come up with now, and like, oh, sorry, I can't go on, and then move on. Someone else had to take it. It's a true story, cheesy but true, and also Sebastian would always like come out of our producer would come out of the room like, it's great, and so absolutely, and it's tears are good for the team. Good tears are good for the team.
Yeah, it's good team building too.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. We have a final question back at the back here.
When it comes to VR, you get a lot more, like, you can touch more stuff in the world.
Yeah.
So when you made like the narrative of Ghost Giant, you like more limits of what the player can interact with, that directly impact the story, or like if you poke the mount too much, will she react some way in the narrative?
No, we try to. Oh, sorry.
So basically, well, with VR and interactability with the story, so like, if I understand the question, like when you poke the mother more, will she react more? Is that your question?
Yeah, something like that. Like, do you take things into consideration, or do you like limit the interaction?
Okay, so do you limit interactions? So yeah.
Yeah, it was a constant, tricky balance of taking away control and giving control, enough control to make the player not feel robbed, So those cutscenes, for instance, where we dim down the light, we disable the physics in the game. So all you can do is maybe play around with a little something over there, or just maybe not a crate that you can throw at the scene, and the mom no reactions for if you poke her more than once. It's we're constantly weighing those things, trying to keep the. It's really hard when a player can just go around and punch anything if they want to. But people are very surprisingly respectful. If you see play testers or you look at YouTubers, people are very, very careful, especially in VR. I think there's something different with that, how you are there. Like, oh, I'm not sure how this works yet because it's such a new medium. So right now it's a very great place to work with emotional storytelling like this.
Cool, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for questions. But we're going to see more of you because you're going to head into the studio. So thank you so much for your talk.
Thank you so much.
And
thank you.
Look forward to hearing what you're going to see on the panel.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
So yes, another round of applause. Absolutely. And like I said, it's time for another panel, and we're going to talk more about narrative. So I will leave it to you, Jesper, in the studio.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, welcome back to the studio / the living room, where we soon will welcome Olov as well when he makes his run from the stage to the studio. Yeah, as Anna said, we have a focus on narrative, and we'll call this segment "The Road to Writing a Universe." And there's Olov. Welcome, welcome, and. I will also urge you to send us some questions via the Discord server. So hop into this Discord server and ask us some questions, and we can pick some of them up as well from you watching at home. So a warm welcome to you, my brilliant panel, and I want you to introduce yourselves with a couple of sentences. So who are you?
All right. Hi, I'm Robin. I work at PocApp Studios as a lead designer and writer.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm Hannah. I work at Coffee Studios. I'm the world designer and writer there. So,
welcome to you as well. And Olov, we have seen you, but you can still, if someone comes in right now and for this talk.
Yes. Where's the camera?
It's that one.
Oh. Hello, I'm Olov Redmalm, and I work as creative director and work with narrative and writing at Zoink Games.
Yeah. A big welcome to you, and I'm excited because writing is my personal favorite aspect of game making. So maybe some off-topic issues as well. Maybe you get to hold me back on track. Anyway, I would like to start because there's a lot of students watching this, and I would like to focus a bit on getting into the industry. So Robin, how did you get your current job? How was that process like?
So I'm a co-founder at PocApp.
Right. So you created your own job, basically.
Yeah, basically. I had the pleasure of never having to apply for a job.
Yeah.
I created my own.
Yeah. How was that process like? Did you get together when you studied, or?
Yeah, we were a student group at the second year here at the University of Skövde.
Yeah.
And we decided we wanted to continue making games throughout the summer. And from that, we spawned the company.
Yeah. And was it apparent from the start that you wanted to focus on really cute pets, or where did that idea come from?
Yeah, the pets were there from the start.
All right.
They were.
So you're pet owners yourselves in the studio and have a...
Yeah, many of us have cats. I am a dog person myself.
All right.
So I have a dog.
I am allergic to both dogs and cats, which is a big shame because I really like them. So maybe I could use your games as a substitute then.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah. All right. For you, Anna, your path into the games development has been quite different from Robin's, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. I studied in the Netherlands. And this sort of came to be because I loved games and I loved writing. I was like, why not both?
Yeah.
And then pretty much the first thing I heard was like, don't do it. Don't do games writing because it's really tough.
So to get a job,
okay,
or like
to get a job, specifically that. So I was like, okay, so if I think tactically about this, what else do I like? And I was following a fairly general sort of education at that point, so it was design focused. So then I figured out, oh, level design. Level design is a lot of fun, and I like doing it a lot too. So I basically got internships based on level design. And then eventually I ended up at Coffee Stain. And once I got there and I found out, hey, there's some things in this game that I think could benefit from writing, I was like, I have some skills. I can maybe help out here.
Yeah.
So then I pitched internally, and I became a writer internally after I'd worked there for a bit as a world designer.
Yeah, but I guess like designing environments and stuff could also help you, like with storytelling.
Pretty much any skill can help you with storytelling, and I benefit immensely from having been a designer and being involved in the design process of the game, because I know very well how to now marry it with story, basically.
Yeah. I guess it also helps you get more of your work into the actual game. You know how to write for them to pick it up as well, the designers.
Yes, yeah, depending on which game you have. Like in our game Satisfactory, which is open world, it's very nature focused, the world itself. So it's hard to do like the traditional environmental storytelling, because we don't have people, we don't have buildings really, because everything that the player adds to the world, that's the buildings.
Yeah.
So that's their own thing. So all we have to work with is nature. So it's challenging in that way, but there are many other ways that we can tell stories, like with the buildings as well that you build, and the UI has a lot to do as well there. So
what's your favorite aspect right now? Because it's in early access, you can change, but what's your favorite aspect right now about storytelling in Satisfactory?
Oof, I think like a lot of it is the basics, and there's a lot coming that I can't talk about, sadly.
Of course.
But I think my favorite aspect is the players sort of role-playing themselves. Like we give them, you know, you work for a fictional company called Fix It Incorporated, and we show that a lot in the design of the buildings, the design of the UI, the intro cutscene, stuff like that. And there's some players that take it basically to the next level, where they're like, you know, hey, they send us a screenshot. It's like, hey, I built Fix It HQ. It's crazy, you know. They make their own stories with the tools that we give them, and it's really cool to see that. Like, that's my favorite part.
So next level is cosplaying, or maybe that's already
I mean,
been done.
stuff like that, yeah. Yeah. We just had a fan art competition where we were making merch with fan art that people sent to us, and it was really cool to see. So yeah, it's...
Yeah, and Olov, you're a creative director now at Zoink, or / Thunderful Development, it says here. And you started out somewhere else, I guess.
Yeah, I started studying comics in Gävle, where I learned storyboarding and writing and dramaturgy, and I've always been interested in creating Dungeons and Dragons campaigns or any kind of role playing. I mean, and it's. I mentioned that on stage, but you create this very isolated group of people who get so engaged in this world and their characters, and it's such a great way to test your story and see how it engages people. And I remember being very frustrated, like, oh, this is so great and so beautiful, but what do you do with all this, and how do you work with this? And much later I discovered game development, but first I studied comics and always been interested in drama and acting, and I do a little bit of voice acting myself. And at the Game Assembly, I was a game artist, but ended up doing mostly narrative stuff because no one else would do it. And it was kind of expected of us, but it wasn't a criteria on paper. So it was. So yeah, that's the way I went. Yeah.
And what was your first job in the industry?
That was on FEA game, the FEA game on
for Zoink.
For Zoink, the EA Originals title, where I worked a lot with environmental storytelling with hieroglyphs. I painted all of those that you see on the rocks that kind of hint at the background story. Yeah. And I got a chance to test directing when I was working on the Silent Ones episodes where you find these old ancient helmets, you put them on, and you get to see the world through flashback to the person that wore these helmets a long time ago, and see the background story that way. Yeah. And I worked with some storyboards on Flipping Death, and I just, like you, showed an interest and I like this kind of things, and I like voice acting, and so I got to do more and more of that, and then after that we needed while other projects were wrapping up, they needed a creative director for Ghost Giant, and that's when I started directing.
Yeah. And you did one heck of a job with Ghost Giant, I have to say. I reviewed the game actually myself, and I really liked it. And one thing I noticed with Zoink games is that it's almost always story heavy, or like the story is at the core of what the game is. Is that a how is that working like that? It sounds like luxury for someone that is into that side of things.
Yeah, it can be dangerous because we love it so much, but it's easy to forget the gameplay. So it's something that we always try to, like now with Lost in Random, we're really trying to push a stronger game loop and make that marry with the narrative. As well as with Ghost Giant when we worked with Sarah B. Elfgren, who writes the dialogue and the main storyline. She was always there to punch up the puzzles and like, oh, what if this little puzzle, can we tweak it like this so the Ghost Giant appears more sympathetic, or maybe not break this house, maybe rebuild the house, or like you try to always trying to like little många bäckar små, many little details to make the
sum of the parts bigger than but sorry for keeping going back to Ghost Giant, but that's something that I really found fascinating with storytelling in games, is when you connect the gameplay to the storytelling, so they are like really intertwined, so they can't be separated from each other. Which was like in VR, it's like effective because you can really like do the things almost physically in the world, as in Ghost Giant. Like, how is that working with VR as a tool for storytelling?
It was really exciting and creative. It was so. I mean, different from anything we'd done before. And I was very skeptical of VR first. Like, I'm just gonna get seasick, but of course I'll give it a shot. It was just such a great forum to experiment and explore, because it's such a new medium. And so we did playtest a lot of games, but not too much, to still keep this kind of a beginner's mind when we started working on it, and because I think that made us try things that maybe others haven't yet, and it's like you say, it was so unpredictable in a great way, just how people will react to shrinking the player or vibrating the, like when you poke Louis, or too much glow when you poke Louis, or everything becomes so much more sensitive, and you become so much more caring about the player and how they will feel playing the game.
Yeah, I really thought it shone through as well when you played it. That it was a what's the word? It was a intimate experience, I think, thanks to the VR. Technology. So it was a cool way to do storytelling in that game, I think. But we've spoken a bit about both your like different kinds of storytelling. In your games, it's like it's not apparent that like writing is the first and foremost thing, and that interests me, how you work with writing in a game that's like gather pets and like, how should I put it? It's like more of a collectathon game, perhaps. How do you work with storytelling and writing in a game like that?
I'm not. So, like you said, it's a luxury to have it integrated in the gameplay. We don't have that luxury. But basically, I just wanted to give the characters more life. That's basically what we do with our stories. We do seasonal events every year, like 6 of them, I think. And each one comes with a story connected to it, so we can flesh out more and more characters as years progress. I think the most fun thing is to see the fan reactions, and the way we talk a lot with our fans, and we hang out in their Discords, and they come up with theories about what's going to happen next and all that. So I think that's...
What's your favorite event this far, and the storyline that comes with it?
I think, well, one of my favorites is the one we did in Castle Cats this Halloween. It's ongoing right now. It's my first experiment to make a story that's connected with the next season.
An arc.
So that's going to be fun. Let's see how fans react to that.
And your fans, is there a certain type of player, like age-wise and gender-wise, or do you see any patterns in the community?
Very mixed for players, but I think most of those who hang out in the Discord and talk to us are like 13 to 20, I think.
Right. It's really interesting to hear the dynamic between you, because you have so like different, as you said, different environments in actually doing your writing and your work. And if we focus a bit more on the student side of it, like becoming a professional writer or creative in the industry, you probably need to create a portfolio or something that shows off your work. What's your tips on how to reason when you put together your something you want to show off for people to hire you?
Well, one thing that I always kind of preach for is Twine, because it's a very easy tool to learn. Plus, it's a pretty powerful tool as well, especially for storytelling, because you can practice a whole type of interactive storytelling with it. You can go for branching dialogue. You can go for, creating a fictional cutscene, maybe. Like, generally, going away from more traditional writing, where it's like, having a script is fine. Having like script samples is fine, but I think it's more important to show your way of interacting with, like, okay, how do I write a story for something that's interactive, that requires input from a player, and like how do I account for that? So yeah, Twine is really good for that. If you have more technical still, or if you have a bigger library of assets, maybe in the Unreal Engine or Unity, stuff like that, modding is also very, very good way to sort of get into making content for a game that already exists. So you have the parameters, you don't need to think of anything. You just like take Skyrim, make a quest line, stuff like that. Because the bonus with that is also it teaches you a lot about the other tools and a lot about other design principles, which is very valuable.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
And for you, Olaf, what would be your tips for someone looking to create a portfolio?
Oh, those were great tips. but Twine we actually used in Lost at Random. The only I can only talk from my experience, and it's just generally being open to. I think one can get very attached to one way of like, I'm going to break through like this. Like I wanted to become a concept artist, for instance, and I started on studying at the game assembly, working with 3D, and thinking I was I can settle for 3D, or was my intention then. And then I still ended up working with concept art because I painted on the side, or there was some courses in the game assembly, and I ended up learning a lot that I needed to know about concept art to work with it later. And same with writing. I just naturally, because I naturally enjoy it and want to do it, I did that in that situation. So I think also be open to trying something else and coming the way around. Like if you find it hard to break through with the thing you really, really love, try the second best, and that might have more opportunities, and then manipulate your way.
Yeah, fudge your way into doing the thing you actually want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Yeah, and that way you learn something about the people you will be writing for later, but definitely that's a really good tip. I will pass that on to friends who want to work with narrative. Fine, and
it's good with like. Things you can point to that people can go interact with like immediately after watching this. That's good. And Robin, for you for someone looking to get a job at your studio, what would you look at from a portfolio? What would you want to see?
I think as an employer, I would rank actual finished games like the highest, even if it's. So if I'm employing a narrative designer or another writer that's going to work with me, I wouldn't necessarily need him to have written like a big RPG. I think I'd value him having worked on and published a small mobile game with like it's Tetris with a Romeo and Juliet story. I would value that higher than having written like a big novel, for example.
So having finished, seeing the whole arc, like having something finished to point to,
and being involved in actual game development, rather than just being good at writing. I think.
And saying what you said about, which sounded awesome, by the way, with the Romeo and Juliet story in a Tetris game, is that the storytelling in Tetris what's the name? I blank on the name. The Tetris game from Tetsuya Mitsuguchi, who made the Res and stuff like that. Tetris Effect, where they tell a story. Yeah, they tell a story arc in Tetris, like by playing Tetris and using the audio and the music by telling a story and the sounds that you make when you turn the tetraminos. It was a mind-blowing experience to actually see that. Yeah, you're actually telling a story without almost a single line of dialogue, lyrics, obviously. But yeah,
because a lot of people think that storytelling is actually having a script and text and RPG and choices, but it's pretty much already ingrained in games, because story, like how the player interacts with the game, creates a story. You know, that's interactivity in itself is powerful that way. So yeah, the words aren't everything. So if you can also try to, you know, create a story with more just game mechanics in itself, with sound, with all those things, that's amazing too.
Do you have some examples of games that do that you are like fans of? Like
Journey, absolutely. Journey is a master in storytelling without saying a single word. It's really good. Yeah,
all their games. I think by Journey is probably the pinnacle of their work. I guess. But
like especially environmental storytelling, especially, is very strong in that game.
Yeah, really strong. I mean, I bet most of the people have played it, but the last section in the snow is like, I don't know what kind of person you are if you don't get a bit choked up by that part.
Right.
It's really good. Do you have any examples of games that have like told storytelling in a surprising way or like an inspiring way?
Oh well, certainly Journey, in the sense that it has no words, and we looked at that a lot for Fe also, but. I lost my. Can I come back to that?
Yeah, no problem. Do we have an example of games that you look up to that tell story?
I think Undertale does a really good job at actually integrating gameplay into it. It's like the opposite of Journey, where it's
mostly text
gameplay. And then like environmental storytelling. And Undertale is like very heavily integrated in the very mechanics of the game. I think they do real well.
And the start of that game, like, collect those pieces. Oh no, they will hurt you. It's like the immediate twist is really cool, because it says a lot about the world what do you think as a aspiring writer? What would be the most important skills to have and to learn if people are watching and probably studying right now? What would you focus on? Like, this is a really important part to learn, Hannah.
I think it's not per se dialogue's a bonus, but I don't think it's the core of what happens. I think it's more, communication, of course, is very important for any discipline. Especially, you know, you have to be able to convince people that your story is worth it. You have to convince yourself that your story is worth it. Being able to finish something, very important. Much more difficult than it seems. But I think pretty much, you know, any knowledge of disciplines that you work with is very, very good to have, whether that's art, whether that's programming, whether that's design, because the nice thing is it makes you particularly strong in storytelling in that aspect. If you have an art background, you'll probably be able to help make the art tell your story for you as well. You know, and that's incredibly important in a medium that's comprised of so many different moving parts.
And amplify the things you want to say, I guess.
Exactly, and it's why I also branched into design so much more, because it helped make me so much better at storytelling in games specifically. Not per se like if I would write a book, maybe less applicable, but for games specifically, it was very helpful.
What's some of your best tips sort of for someone wanting to break into the industry and wanting to point at those sort of skills I need to have?
Just one thing that springs to mind is something that Sarah B. Elfgren, who did the dialogue for and story for Ghost Giant, taught me was too. When I did some additional writing, she gave me the feedback that always try to, like, it's so tempting to expand with all these extra adjectives and like, but the fewer words, like the still and the fewer words you use, the more you mean it. Is her philosophy, at least, and also be very vigilant about dialogue when you're having fun, dialogue can easily run away and become way too long, and how the player will experience this, of course, communication and what, like you said, and just will the player find it boring, engaging? Is it just fun for me, or listen to feedback and great voice acting. You mean, so the question was about writing for...
Yeah, if you're a student and wonder about what skills should I focus on during my education to be ready when when it's time to graduate and work.
I think definitely also get a great sense for the whole picture. Begin with like a beginning and an end, and getting a sense for all these different story beats and how if you write a synopsis and you have this, like we had for Ghost Giant, a synopsis which we broke up, and then we had that way we always had these very powerful beats that we want to work ourselves up to, and then it's much more easier to fill the gaps in between.
So structuring your writing,
structural storytelling is very important.
Yeah. And I guess that's something that if you haven't worked professionally with storytelling before, it's something it's easy to miss, like to have, as you said, like to outline your stories and stuff.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think David Lynch said, like, I mean, of course he has a lot of crazy storytelling, but he said like all you need is 70 great ideas, and then I put them together in an interesting way. And well, that's crazy. It has some kind of that sounds like a nice way to work, and also like a way to experiment and try to find things that pop and like let loose a little bit of, because I can get really easily intimidated by the idea of like making this really meaningful big structure and story, and then it's nice to have these little gaps in between where you can just let the exploration take over and take you with you on a ride on something expected, and be open and be okay with not knowing.
Always be open. Like usually the best ideas don't come from yourself sometimes. Like they just come from outside.
Yeah.
And that way you could also like you can always like connect stuff afterwards, like write stuff to make sense, depending on the game, of course. But I mean, in the case of Ghost Giant, it felt like there are different rides, almost like environments that got intertwined by the story, but the milieux were like different, as going to a new amusement park and experiencing different rides almost. I saw the game like that anyway.
Yeah. They're like different little diorama pieces that you could explore. Yeah,
and they were like vastly different as well. So the theme was like really strong within each one of them, I felt. Anyway, you mentioned dialogue, and maybe the dialogue isn't the end all and be all of writing, but if something that I'm really interested in is that how do you write a dialogue that's that feels natural, human, like even if your game is not like realistic or anything, how do you write a dialogue that feels like that speaks to you as a player for real, that isn't just text on a screen? What would you say, Robin? How do you write cats and dogs saying things to you?
Yeah, I think when I write, I imagine it like a movie, and I hear their voices in my head.
Right.
So I think that's the way I make it sound natural. I don't know if I succeed or not, but that's the way I do it. I think many people who write dialogue get stuck in like this deep literature way of writing.
Yeah,
and they
Shakespearean stuff.
Yeah, they use like big words and all that. Try to think of it like actual conversation between just two people.
Yeah. That's something I'm really interested in as well. Like, how do you get it to feel like an actual conversation and not stilted?
Usually what I do is I actually say it out loud, because that usually also makes you, if not just whether it sounds natural, but also whether the words fit together well. Because if you stumble, then maybe the voice actor is also going to stumble, right? And beyond that, like, okay, writing dialogue is one thing, but knowing the character behind the dialogue and knowing what they want in that scene, that is more important than the words, because there are so many words that you can use in the same way. But if you have, if you're stuck with a scene, usually it's because there's either a missing conflict between characters. This doesn't have to be a violent conflict, but more like person A wants to do this and person B wants to do this. Maybe they want the same thing, but they don't agree on the method of doing it. Figuring that stuff out is usually more important than like what your word choice is, because the word choice can always be adjusted much more easily than like what the actual scene depicts.
Right.
So that is usually what I look at.
And you spoke about having a message in your game, which is, as you said, can sound a bit daunting when you start out writing the story and the game and the world. How do you manage to not land in a place where it feels like trite or like like cheesy or whatever, as you said? Like how do you manage to tell a like genuine story and a heartwarming story without stepping across the line and getting cheesy or like predictable? Or
it's so difficult always trying to just learn to keep away. It's easy to say but hard to explain how, but like to keep back in just enough information. For instance, with Louis and his mother, we were like so careful not to reveal that too soon exactly what it was, so people can build up their own idea of what's gonna happen and what's wrong with her. Like, oh, maybe she's the ghost giant, or all this kind of twist people begin to imagine. And because the story play a lot with contrasts in like because the surface of the story is so bright and colorful and happy and humorous, it becomes more powerful when the truth comes out. And also on the coming up with natural dialogue, it helps to have a friend also. To me and Klaus Linglet, for instance, we usually sit in a room, come up with ideas, and suddenly we start talking the dialogue to each other, like and make each other laugh. And we never record it. We say we should, but we write it down afterwards. And also, I mean, for Lost in Random, for instance, and with Sarah, we only did additional writing. We write the big picture for Lost in Random, but Ryan North, a writer who worked on some Adventure Time comics and the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, he writes the dialogue. So we usually have the puzzle script, and we write the description of like, here we need this conflict needs to come across, or she's really sad, but she also has to trade with this guy because it's a gameplay thing, and then he comes up with the dialogue for that, or we explain a bit what the character is and what kind of, maybe we have some ideas for some jokes or a little sketch of the dialogue, but. So that's a good way of like maybe it's a really great point, like you said, writing down what the actual purpose behind this scene is and this dialogue. And
and I've brought up this example a couple of times already during our talks with the other panelists, but I think Hades is a new game that is amazing in dialogue. I mean, it's a bizarre situation. Like you are the son of the death god, and you're supposed to have conversations with like a severed Medusa head and stuff. And to make that actually relatable is like amazing to me how you manage that. And as I said before, like imagine them as characters in the movie. Are there more like tricks like that you use to like give characters life when it comes to like dialogue and how you're portraying your characters?
Try to find real people that have elements of that character, and then like either base it on your interactions with them, or just be like, hey, what would you do in this situation? That could very well help as well. And look at how other pieces of media do it, but be careful what you let influence you, because it doesn't, just because a medium exists doesn't mean it's a good one, right? So a show can be very helpful, but it can also hinder you. Depending on how it's received and what you want to do with your story. But take a show like The Good Place. This is a very popular show, and it's been incredibly well received. So using a show like that is more safe to use. Like, okay, if I want certain aspects of this character, I can look at this show and like take from that a little bit.
What's your main inspirations right now in the games you're working with? Like currently this few last weeks or whatever, like what are inspiring you right now in your work?
I don't think I can say, because that would spoil maybe too much, and I would be breaking some NDAs. But I don't know. You can't.
See, can anyone or other of you spill the beans?
I'm always Star Wars is always a safe place for me if I need to relax my brain and just remember where I come from. I watch a random Star Wars movie, or but also Over the Garden Wall is a huge inspiration for Lost in Random, in the way that it's all these very random, matter-of-factly Brothers Grimm fairy tales. This is just how it is, but there's also a red thread underneath and a dark secret under everything. And yes.
What's the thing about Star Wars? What's the like? What's the deal about Star?
It has the drama, it has the comedy and the sense of adventure and promise of adventure and the music and all the emotional range and there's so much of it. Even the like episode 1, 2, 3, which I know are not very popular. I enjoyed to death when I was a kid because there was just so much in them and they're still quite different from any other. Like they take a lot of crazy risks also and I mean great archetypes for characters and contrasts between characters, and that's another thing of like getting a player's attention to in dialogue to create these contrasts of mood. So one thing we always go back to when we feedback actors is to not have this. I mean, that they be careful not to get too monotone if they're delivering lines, everything in one go, and just remember to spike here in these emotions and or exclaim this word really loudly so the player wakes up and I'm listening and because it's easy to just want to skip past everything. And,
So it's a way to keep players engaged, to be dynamic in the way you deliver the actual dialogue. What inspires you, Robin, in your work?
So one big inspiration for our second game, Dungeon Dogs, it's about dogs fighting in a revolution against evil cats. So I've been listening to like the Hamilton album for like 50 times in a loop while writing. It's been a great help.
All right. What kind of influences are that? What kind of music is it? And
Hamilton. Oh, it's about the American Revolution.
All right. Sorry, I haven't. Cause I heard it spoken about loads of time, but I haven't. Okay.
Yeah. So the music is awesome and and it fits the theme.
So. Okay. So that's kind of current as well. Really like on topic right now, I guess. So that's something to look out for when you play the game. Then we have a couple of minutes before we need to wrap up. Even if it says overtime in big red letters, it's all right. We have a few minutes, but I wanted to close out with maybe giving some more tips to people watching and aspiring to get into the industry. What do you wish you knew when you started out in the industry? Some things that would have helped me when I started.
Try not to write in a bubble. And this is mainly like if you're the sole writer on a project, try to find someone to help you. No matter how experienced they are with writing, because I noticed myself that if I write like by myself and I'm in my own bubble, you just get stuck immediately. Like it's very, very hard to just do that by yourself. So if it's a small project, it's not as bad, but the bigger the project, the harder it gets. So either try to get, consultants if you're already working somewhere, or just have friends help you out, or just like anonymously on the internet or something, just because it's better for your mental health that way.
I work with writing in other fields, and I really relate to that. Like, it's really hard to get to grips with what's good and what's not if you're just wrestling with the text yourself. So
exactly.
And Olov, do you have any revelations that you made when you got into the industry that you would have liked to told yourself before you got into it?
Well, there's a lot of possibility, and there are a lot of unexpected ways of getting into what you want to work with. And like I said, touched on earlier, that it's not as easy as, it's not as simple as I studied to become a concept artist and then I'm concept artist until I'm dead. but rather, like, it can be very organic.
It's a winding road.
Yes. and be open to that. It doesn't have to happen now, and you don't know how it's going to happen. Just as long as you keep that spark up and that will to work with it, and you keep looking for that company that you really are comfortable in and you feel heard, and I think the biggest thing is just before working in games, all the doors feel so closed and cold. You don't know how it looks on the other side, but looking on the other side, I see that like so many talented people apply and they get a no, and it's not about them, but it's just so many people looking. And I just had a friend who'd been applying for a job at Zoink for maybe 4 times, and now he finally got in because now we really need you. Just that there's a lot of possibilities, and don't give up, the old cliche, but it's, and be open and have an explorative mind and have patience, and don't be afraid to write a bad script and show it to people. And
absolutely, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Robin, you get the honor to close out, so no pressure. But what would you like to say to people like trying to get into the industry? What is some?
I'd say as a writer, definitely take on something other than writing. I think most indies and small companies won't be able to hire a full-time writer.
Exactly.
Ever. So yeah, get to know other things and be open-minded, and also don't think too big with your first game. To all new game devs out there,
don't go branching immediately.
Yeah,
please
start small. Maybe do the Tetris Romeo and Juliet thing.
Yeah,
as the first game you publish.
Free pitch there as well. Okay, thanks Robin, thanks Hanna, and thanks Olov for a really interesting talk. I could go on for like an hour more, but we can't because the numbers get more and more red here on our screen. So
someone will get angry.
Yeah, they look really angry actually. So a big thanks to you.
Thank you.